Tech. It's in Blacksburg on a great Monday night, Labor Day Monday, that is, college football game to start the season for these two schools. I'm Dan Harrelson, and let's talk about this game with Andy Bittner. He's a writer and beat writer for the Hokies for the Roanoke Times and the Virginia Pilot. Andy, how are you doing today?
Not too bad. How are you?
Pretty well. Just ready for this game tonight. It should be a somewhat decent game, but I do like Virginia Tech tonight. What are your thoughts on Logan Thomas and Frank Beamer heading into this first game?
Well, I think you feel comfortable with Virginia Tech every year. They've won 10 games for 8 straight years, and I don't really see why that streak would end this year. They've got a really strong defense with 9 starters back. They've got Logan Thomas, who's one of the better quarterbacks in the conference, possibly the country, if he continues to progress the way he did last season. So when you have those two kind of elements going, yeah, they have to fill in some spots in the offensive line into the running game, but those other things kind of make up for that to start off the season. So hey, I think the Hokies are feeling pretty confident going into this game. I think they feel they have a strong team this year.
Well, you mentioned the 8 straight seasons with 10 or more wins. That's pretty impressive. Of course, last year the Hokies went 11-3. Frank Beamer, he's 209 career wins, 26 year at Virginia Tech now. He's just quietly doing this. It seems like it's 10 wins each and every season, but the only problem with Frank Beamer, he still hasn't won that, I guess, a BCS national championship. Do you think there's a lot of pressure on him now to maybe, because you said the Clemsons of the ACC starting to compete for the championships, and it looks like they may make some noise again this season, but what's the ideal perspective of Frank Beamer entering year number 26 in Blacksburg?
Well, I think it's a growing chorus among the fans that they want to see a little bit more. I mean, everybody's obviously happy with what Frank Beamer has done in his 26 years now 26 years, 25 years here, but there's a whole generation of Virginia Tech fans who have only known this kind of success. So I think they're almost kind of spoiled by that level of success where they're kind of looking at this and wondering, when are they going to do more? When are they going to compete for that national championship? Playing on the big stage, Virginia Tech hasn't fared too well, losses the last couple of years against Boise State, Alabama, Michigan. You mentioned the big games, ACC championship last year against Clemson that's back, and that was an ugly game. Virginia Tech really did not compete well in that game or the other game against Clemson that year. So I think there are questions out there about whether Frank Beamer's teams can really compete on that elite level. I know they're in the 10 to 15 range every year in the rankings, but I think a lot of fans want to see them go up to that top 5 range. And that's a difficult step to take, but that's the next step for this program to try to make, and that's something I think Frank Beamer would like to do before he retires.
Well, Virginia Tech enters this game tonight 15-1 overall in Blacksburg for season openers. Of course, the only loss was back in 2010 against James Madison. Of course, that was a crazy upset, but let's talk about the season. Georgia Tech tonight, I think Virginia Tech should win. But looking at the whole schedule, I could easily see another 10-win season. Of course, you had to play Florida State at home on a Thursday night. Going into that game, you have Miami at Miami on a Thursday, and then you're at Clemson. So pretty tough task there. What are your thoughts on the Hokies getting more than 10 wins this season?
I think I picked them to go 11-3 again this year. Regular season I had them 10-2, and like you mentioned, there's some games in that schedule that aren't exactly gimmies. The 3 you mentioned, although I don't really know about Miami. We'll see if that team really as much as it's cracked up to be. I think that opener against BC is just a pretty bad team, but North Carolina is a team I think they're getting overlooked on that schedule just because Tar Heels have a new coach, aren't eligible for the postseason, which includes the ACC title game this year, so they haven't really been counted in the Coastal Division, but that could be a tough game. That's a game in Chapel Hill, and kind of a game that I'm sure that they have circled on the calendar playing against Virginia Tech just because they're not going to be able to go to a bowl game this year. But the ACC, you look at it, Georgia Tech, Florida State, Clemson, UNC, I think those are the major games that could go either way, and that'll determine whether Virginia Tech gets to those 10 wins again this year.
Well, speaking of that Miami game, we all y'all remember when Virginia Tech Miami was just a great game. Of course, it probably started around when Michael Vick arrived in Blacksburg, but ever since Miami moved to the ACC, why do you think they have fallen from the national prominence? Do you think they just did not adapt well to the conference?
No, I think it's just a total of these NCAA things that are going on down there. I mean, they were at the top of their game early 2000s. I don't think you could argue that there's a program that was better in the country, but they haven't recruited as well. Once Butch Davis left, that kind of petered off at the end of Larry Coker's time there, and then Randy Shannon not quite as great there, and the NCAA thing took its toll, and some of the guys, some of the talented guys that have been there just have left the program. But I think Al Golden has recruited well. He's going to recruit well, and in that area, if you recruit well, you're going to have a top 10 class every year. And if he can kind of build that level of talent back up down there, I think Miami will get back eventually, but it also has that NCAA sword hanging over its head right now. You don't know exactly how much they're going to be punished for that. So it's kind of a program that's in limbo right now, but it's Miami. I mean, it always finds its way back to these things, and it just takes a little bit more time.
Well, what are your thoughts on tonight? Like you stated, 9 returning starters for Virginia Tech on the defensive side of the football. Do you think they're going to pretty much shut down the option attack under Paul Johnson and Tevin Washington tonight?
I don't think so. I don't think you really shut down that attack. And I think you look at the past matchups with Virginia Tech, I don't think they ever have. Last year, Georgia Tech was moving the ball very well for 3 quarters, and then a couple plays happened. Virginia Tech got up by 8 and forced Georgia Tech to the air. And when that happens, it's just not going to happen. The Yellow Jackets, they don't throw the ball that well. So I think the key is getting off to a good start and getting ahead in this team and get this game and putting Georgia Tech in a position where it's going to have to be played from behind. If they don't play well in that situation, then if they get up, they can really grind that clock on you. So, season openers, you can never tell which way it's going to go. So that's why I picked a close game. I think Virginia Tech will grind out a win. I don't think it'll be lopsided either way, though.
Well, you mentioned that you thought Virginia Tech would go 11-3 this season. Of course, that's 14 games. So you obviously have them in the ACC title game and then a bowl game. Who do you think Virginia Tech will play in the ACC championship game, and what bowl game do you think they'll go to?
That's kind of a toss-up in the ACC. I think Florida State and Clemson are probably about the same level of team. I think a lot of people have Florida State higher, and I know that game between the two is in Tallahassee this year, so maybe that might make the difference in who's going to win that division. But you look at the bowl games for Virginia Tech, I think they're probably about the same level of team last year, and I think they were fortunate to get to the Sugar Bowl last year. That was kind of a surprise pick. This year, I think they might have the same record to get the bowl game that they were probably destined to go to last year, which would be the Chick-fil-A Bowl, which is the ACC's number 2. So if I had to guess, that's where I think they'd end up.
Well, that's pretty good stuff, Andy, and looking forward to the game tonight, and Virginia Tech should prevail, but we'll see what happens. That's why they play the game. We would love to get up with you later on throughout the season, and as Virginia Tech goes through this ACC championship run.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you.